And get started. Hope you all are enjoying lunch. Good afternoon from the Cook Club at SIU. It is the season debut of Inside Saluki Women's Basketball alongside the head coach, Cindy Stein. I'm your host, Kelly Burke, and we want to thank all of you who are in attendance here today at the Cook Club and also to those listening on 105.1 VZA. This program was recorded earlier today, as I mentioned, at the Cook Club. Coach, first of all, it's December, hard to believe already. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Everyone was a little worried, I think, after our last game how I was. So I got that question a lot today. So obviously I must not look very happy, and I wasn't. But I'm doing good.
Well, hard to believe you guys are 7 games in now. You sit at 3-4 on the season. How would you assess where your young ball club is at this point?
That's a tough question, the fact that I think it's a day-to-day thing with us. And I feel like, obviously after that Purdue game, we were on a pretty good high, and we played such a great, courageous game. And then I think that the last few games we've lost our confidence a little bit and a little bit of our swag. So, we're a team that's, trying to find ourselves a little bit and trying to find a really good rotation that's consistent. And but I love this team. I think that we're going to be really good. I just can't wait till we put it all together.
When you have 5 freshmen on your roster, how different do practices look this year, say, from last year when you were a veteran team? And how have you had to adjust your coaching style accordingly?
Well, I think repetition's a key word because we have to do a lot of repetition type things. And I used to tell them if I said things 3 times, they knew I was going to probably blow a gasket. And now, I try to make it to 6 without blowing the gasket. But, and I think, we just have to do things over and over again. And we try to do it obviously at the most intense, high speed we can to, present a game experience for them. But, we've got kids that have never run plays before. We've got schemes when it comes to what we want to do defensively, and that's new to a lot of kids. And then, we've got a sophomore group as well. You got to throw them in that mix that they didn't get a lot of playing time last year because obviously our juniors and seniors were so good. So, we've got a lot of young kids out there, so it's a lot of repetition.
Well, we have some audience questions for you, and one of them actually goes along with that freshman theme. Jack Wisman would like to know which new player has had the most dramatic impact on the team so far.
I believe we'd probably have to say Lauren Hartman. Prior to her getting a concussion against Edwardsville, I feel like she's probably had the biggest impact in the fact that, you've got a freshman coming in and averaging 11 rebounds, and she's a good shooter. She probably has rushed her shot a little bit until she gets her confidence. I think people are going to see she's also a really good shooter, but, definitely coming in and making an impact, being able to start and do such a tremendous job on the boards. I think that's probably been the biggest impact.
Lauren missed a couple games with a concussion, was back in the lineup last week against UAB. But how has her being out affected the rotations, and just, you mentioned the confidence.
Well, we really felt like her confidence was getting better and better, and then obviously she goes out a little bit. And then, she's got to find her way back in because, the chemistry when you're trying to replace that player to get, someone else to come in and get those 11 rebounds. That's huge. So you got to do it by committee. She knew the plays pretty well, so things ran pretty smoothly. And unfortunately we've got some of that with, substitutions, is that some of those kids, their timing of the plays is not as good. So, we've struggled a little bit, as everyone knows, offensively, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But they're working hard, and they're going to stay better. But, obviously, Lauren was someone that was that did it right away. But as the season goes on, you're going to find different kids step in and do all those things for us. It's just a matter of time.
You mentioned you've had some big wins this season against Purdue. You played Oklahoma tough in the first half. Right now, you've hit a 2-game losing streak, but what must this team do a better job of going forward?
Well, I would say that the biggest thing is that we can't have our veterans losing confidence, and that's kind of what happened against UAB. Is that our veterans weren't playing real well, and then they lost a little bit of confidence, and the younger kids are looking to them for guidance. So we've got to obviously continue to have really good leadership and a positive leadership, and I think that the best thing moving forward is just the fact that we've got to come to practice knowing that we've got to prepare in a certain way and at a certain intensity to get better. And with a young team, that's always one of the hardest things is getting them to know that practice is actually really important.
Let's go to another audience question. After a year, what is your opinion of the quarter system?
Yeah, I don't like the quarters, but there isn't anything I could do about it. I like the halves, but I grew up that way. So, the quarter system, what has changed is we don't obviously have as many timeouts. Our timeouts might be longer, but we don't have as many because obviously we always had the media at 16, 12, 8, and 4. And then you'd have your 5 timeouts. Well, now you're eliminated timeout. Now you've got pretty much one media per quarter. So it makes that your kids have to make adjustments on the floor, where prior to this, we could actually call a timeout or you'd have a media where you could do a lot more teaching in that time frame. And so, people sometimes wonder why you don't call a timeout when someone's going on a run so early in the game. And it's because you've got to have 2 timeouts at the end of the game to get what you need across. And you hope that the kids can adjust. And then obviously sometimes you just got to blow all your timeouts just to get them on the right page. But I'm not a fan of that one.
And the second part of that question is, how do quarters affect fouls now?
Well, every quarter, you get to your 5th foul, and obviously people are going to start shooting. You don't get to the free throw line as much, and I think that's the biggest thing. Hopefully we're never a team that fouls very much, but we have been. So it's affected us in that way, is that people are getting to the line a lot more than we have, and that's something we've got to continue to work on. You got the 2 shots instead of the 1-on-1. I'm always a big believer in 1-on-1 because we always want to shoot 80%. You hope that the other team doesn't. So just gives them one more free throw, especially for a bad free throw shooter.
Well, we'll hear more from Coach Stein coming up in a bit, but next we will talk to the senior point guard of the Saluki team, Roshanda Napier. This is Inside Saluki Women's Basketball from Learfield. El Presidente. I like that. That's great. Are you going home at all? Yeah. That's good. Actually, a long break this year. Oh, good. All right. We're going to start now. Welcome back to Inside Saluki Women's Basketball from Learfield. I am now joined by the Saluki senior point guard, Roshanda Napier. I just actually heard your nickname is El Presidente. What is the backstory behind that?
It actually started with Kim Nebo. I don't know where we were, but for some reason I was wearing something nice. I had on like a blazer, a collared shirt and pants, and Kim was like, wow, you're dressed like you want to be president of the United States of America. And from there, it just stuck. So now whenever I walk in a room, everybody says, there's the president. And then Kim likes to say, I'm out for presidents to represent me every time she sees me. So I just can't shake it at this point.
I think Bryce and I are going to have to remember to use that this weekend in the broadcast. It's hard to believe you're a senior this year. How has your role changed, and what are you particularly enjoying about this season so far?
It hasn't changed too much. obviously somebody being so ball dominant as a point guard, somebody that the team looks to for leadership. But this senior year for me is kind of special because of the freshmen. Because when I was a freshman, I didn't have any senior leadership simply due to the fact that there were no seniors on the roster. So it's important to me, and I assign meaning to the fact that I can give freshmen something that I wish that I had when I was in their position.
You're one of 3 captains on this team, Kylie Gabelhausen and Carly Corrigan being the other. And before the season started, I can remember, I think it was Coach Stein had tweeted a picture out. The 3 of you were over at her house having dinner. And I'm curious, what were some of the things the 4 of you talked about as far as leadership goes this year?
Well, that meeting, Coach Stein actually assigned the captains kind of a homework assignment, if you will. We were to lead like a little class about family and what that means and how that's going to impact our season, us being a family. So we kind of talked about how we were going to get that message across, and we had our team discussion later that week, and it was really good, and we actually learned a lot. We learned a lot about each other. We learned a lot about our teammates and what we needed to do and how family aspects translate to a basketball court and things that we need to do to keep that going in order to have a successful season.
You can always learn a lot about a player from the team's media guide. This year's in particular, you wrote that your favorite TV channel to watch is the Food Network. Your dream job is a food taster at the best restaurant in America with a 6-figure salary, and important to add, 6 months of vacation time. Paid vacation time, excuse me. If you can find something like that, I would love to know. And your favorite pregame meal is steak. And then you just told me, too, earlier, one of your brothers is a professional chef. So where did this fascination with food come from?
Well, you know, when you taste a delicious bite of food, it stays with you. I think that a lot of food being important in my life for me is just because as a family, that's how we gathered. Whenever we had a family gathering, we would gather around the table, laugh, talk, enjoy company, and enjoy a good meal. And ask any of my teammates, ask any of the coaches, I love steak. I don't eat it very often, but I just love it. I think it's delicious. I prefer ribeyes, medium rare. If anybody wanted to know. But yeah, I just love food. I love enjoying food, and I love enjoying good food with good company.
Do you have a favorite restaurant, either locally or on the road, to go to have this ribeye steak?
Whenever we go to Texas Roadhouse, we get our itinerary, so we know where we're going to eat every road trip. And whenever I see Texas Roadhouse on the itinerary, I have to stop myself from crying tears of joy, just because I know that's just my favorite restaurant. Yeah.
You know, you're definitely one of the Saluki's best shooters. I think, though, you would agree you've struggled at times this season to consistently find your shot. So how do you work through that, and what does the internal dialogue look like in your head?
Well, one of my favorite shows of all times is Friends, and in the theme song it says, if it hasn't been your day or week, you must believe in your year. So I've had a couple of bad weeks, but I have to continue to believe in my year and know that this will pass and know that I'm better than this and stay confident and just be ready to knock down big shots when my team needs me.
And interestingly enough, you're a perfect 16 from 16, though, from the charity stripe this year. You've always been a good free throw shooter. What is key to great free throw shooting?
Just believing that you can, and I think it's very important that you do the exact same thing every single time. You can't change your routine. Every time I step to the free throw line, I set my feet, I catch the ball, and I say out loud, you got this. And I take 3 dribbles, bend my knees, and shoot. And if there's one thing I know I can do is make a free throw. So I just have to try to keep that consistent as possible.
Well, El Presidente, thank you for joining us. We will hear more from Coach Cindy Stein coming up. This is Inside Saluki Women's Basketball from Learfield. She set a high bar here.
I know, jeez. She's so well spoken.
Yeah, if the food taster thing doesn't work out, you should consider going into PR.
I think she came out.
Yeah. I'll be your agent even if you'd like. Yeah, she's a tough act to follow.
I know. She's so well spoken.
Yeah. Some of the freshmen I may need to like pre-interview to get them to
Yeah,
talk.
they're very quiet.
Yeah. Good turnout for the first one, I think.
Yep. Yep.
We're going to go about 8:10 on this one.
Okay.
So a couple seconds longer.
And then just close out the show.
Yep.
Okay.
And you're cool on how to close that.
Yeah, you said
Thank who you want to
yeah.
thank.
I was going to talk about briefly mention probably when we get to like a minute or 30 seconds, mention the games, coming up and where to find them.
Thank Coach first.
Yeah.
And then do the thank you. And then you might also try to throw in when the next luncheon is.
Oh, January 5th.
Yeah. For the people here. And when you come out of this break, it might be a good thing to remind. That might be a good time to mention the next show.
Okay.
And then also to remind the audience, the radio audience, that this is a show that's they're invited to too, and it was taped earlier in the day. 13th. Okay. All right, good. Levels are good. Stuff's good. Good stuff. All right.
Welcome back to Inside Saluki Women's Basketball from Learfield. Our next radio show will be Tuesday, December 13th on 105.1 VZA. And for those of you in attendance here today or who would like to come that are listening to the next luncheon, that will be January 5th, 2017. We're joined once again by Coach Cindy Stein. Coach, Selena Van Hefty has been out with a leg injury. How is she progressing, and might we see her back on the court soon?
Well, she will be assessed this week and evaluated, and we'll see from there kind of, how it goes. We hope to see her. Obviously, we have discussed the fact that we'd like to try to get her back for conference play. And I think that, it's really up to the doctors and her body if it's healing correctly. So until then, we're kind of all in that waiting game.
Let's talk a little bit more about the 5 freshmen who come in with, big ambitions and accolades. Kristen Nelson, I read, wants to go to law school. Caitlin Clausen was her class's valedictorian. Brittany Patrick is a pre-physical therapy major. Lauren Hartman was an honor student and 3-sport athlete, and Nicole Martin wants to be an anesthesiologist. So I say this in jest, but is this group smarter than you?
Well, I hope so, and that's, I don't hide the fact that I think it's really important as a coach that you recruit kids that are smarter than you and have them on your team, because they're usually going to make better decisions than you ever could. So, but one of the things that we did look at in recruiting is usually when you have kids that are pretty disciplined off the court, they're pretty disciplined on the court. And I think that that's a key ingredient to success. And I think that this group definitely displays that. Let's
take another question from the audience. Why are the games at 6 p.m. instead of 7 p.m.? I'm not sure that you directly have a say in that.
Well, I actually prefer the 6 o'clock time. This is something that I think that, our staff has always tried to do, in the fact that what we have found is most families with young kids want that earlier time frame. Some of the seniors prefer that earlier time frame, just in the fact that, a lot of times people come home from work and by 7 o'clock they've already forgotten that there's a game because there's just too much time in between. And, when you have a 6 o'clock game, people know they got to get up and get moving and get rolling. So, it allows more young kids to come watch, which we think is very important. They can get to our game and still get home, before bedtime, and that's the audience, obviously, that we're trying to capture.
Have you gotten yet a sense of the team's identity this year?
Yeah, I would tell you our identity right now is a little bipolar. So we want to make sure that, we're working on some things. We're definitely a team in progress. We are constantly striving to get better. It's just so hard to say, especially after our last 3 games, because, those were all games that were winnable, and we did not. So, we just have to get ready to work another day and get better and continue to strive for that. And I do think kids are getting better even in those losses. I feel like there have been some positives that we've got to continue to take and grow on.
Let's take another audience question. This one says, I believe I have heard both Coach Stein and Coach Hinson mention this year's schedule or calendar is 1 week shorter than usual. What gives?
Well, it's whatever the calendar year is was a week less, and then our conference usually starts around January 5th, 6th, or 7th, and our conference season starts December 30th and January 1st. So, you lose a week, you're trying to pile all these games in here, and honestly, with a young team, that's not been in our factor because we don't have enough time on the floor, sometimes to prepare as much as we need to for the opponent, sometimes to just get better and work on some of the things that we know is going to be good. But, it's starting to slow down a little bit, and I think that's in our favor. We took 2 days off this week. We'll take 2 days off next week and continue to, because our kids have to be fresh. You want them to get better, but you also got to make sure they're fresh and they feel good. Their bodies feel good, their minds are clear. Those things are always really important, and we're getting there.
One thing I thought was interesting this season and different from what you as a coaching staff have done in the past is you implemented a positive performance training with Lindsey Wilson. A lot of people out there listening and in attendance aren't necessarily familiar with what that is and what it means. So, how has it helped this young team on and off the court, and what is behind it?
Well, Lindsey Wilson was a guard at Iowa State when I was coaching at Missouri that was one of the very driven athlete and very competitive, and she played with such great passion. And she had started this company, Positive Performance Training, to help athletes understand, how they can do visualization, how they can learn to relax, how they can take control of their mind, which helps them become a better player. And so we've implemented some of those things just in the fact that I felt like since coming here at Southern, we've had some things happen with our team where we could have handled that stress better. And a lot of it is training them to train themselves, to see what they want to be and who they want to be and the kind of character they want, and discuss that. Because just like we talk about family, you can define family as a coach, but it's more important that your team defines family because it means different things to different kids. But kind of coming together and uniting is what we want that to be for the Saluki family. So just trying to do little things like that hopefully brings our team closer, improves the chemistry, and good chemistry off the floor usually translate to good chemistry on the floor. So whatever we can do to help these kids be successful on and off the court, I think is extremely important.
Looking ahead to later this week, SEMO and Memphis come to town. SEMO on Friday at noon and Memphis this Sunday at 2 o'clock. Give us a little scouting report on each and what will be the biggest challenge.
Well, I think that, both teams are pretty much up and down the floor. So, everyone's trying to do different things. So, with SEMO, it's a team that likes to keep things fast-paced. They're very guard-oriented. Memphis, I have not really watched very much. I know they're very athletic. They're really into their defense, very defense-motivated team. So kind of the tale of two different things. But I really like what Coach Patterson's doing at SEMO. I think that she's really improved that program. I know that we've got to be much better than we were last week. And that's probably the most important thing, I think, headed into practice. Not really concentrating so much on what they're going to do, because we need to be better at what we do, and I think that's will be our main focus.
Coach, thanks for joining us, and I wish you a happy holidays.
Well, thank you, and happy holidays to everyone as well.
And keep in mind, again, SIU plays against SEMO this Friday at noon, and then Sunday at 2 o'clock here at SIU Arena against Memphis. And Bryce Williams and I will be on the call of both of those games on 105.1 VZA, and you can also watch them or stream them on ESPN3. Our next luncheon here at the Cook Club is set for January 5th, and our next show will be December 13th, next Tuesday. We look forward to seeing and having you there. This has been Inside Saluki Women's Basketball from Learfield. For Coach Cindy Stein, I'm Kelly Burke, saying so long till next week.